title was The Funeral Home. How many of you moved your babies into a funeral home? Has anybody seen that movie, My Girl? It was out several years ago. It has Macaulay Culkin in it. That's a lot like my life. Dan Aykroyd is the daddy. He's the funeral director. There's a grandmother in there. My grandmother lived in the funeral home. My grandmother died just 2 weeks ago tomorrow. But all these years she's lived in the funeral home. She wasn't catatonic like the grandmother that's rocked it in the chair in the movie. She was up and alive and going. And I didn't ever charge my friends money to come see the bodies. I let them see them for free. But that movie is a whole lot like my life growing up in a funeral home. And I didn't think anything about it. It was just normal. We moved out of the funeral home. We moved back in when I was in like the 3rd and 4th grade while we were building a house. And I was the kid that everybody wanted to talk to on the playground because they all wanted to know, are you scared? Well, no, I wasn't. And did they get up and walk around at night? Well, no, they don't. My grandmother always said that she felt perfectly safe living in a funeral home because who wants to break into a funeral home? Not many people. One of the most interesting aspects about living in a funeral home and growing up as the daughter of an undertaker was that he always drove home from work or drove anywhere from work, whatever work car happened to be available at the time. Well, sometimes that was a nice, Cadillac. Fine. Sometimes it was an ambulance. Y'all don't think that was weird that funeral directors used to drive the ambulance around here? Think about that. You get to the scene and there's a dead one and a live one. Which one do you think they want to get? What do you think about that? Now, sometimes what he drove home was a hearse. And what that meant was, if he was carrying us to school the next morning, guess what we got to ride? And so it would be like, could you let us off at the corner? 2 blocks away so nobody will see us because they're going to really make fun of this when you ride up to school in a hearse. Something that happened one time that I remember was that the youth group from church was going to Six Flags, and whatever car they were going in had broken down or something, so Daddy pulled the hearse out of the garage, loaded up the youth group bus, and we went to Six Flags. And late that night, we ran out of gas. And so there's my daddy and this whole youth group pushing this hearse across some intersection into a gas station somewhere in the Metroplex, I guess, to get gas. An interesting looking sight. Now, growing up in a funeral home, like I said, I didn't think all that was any weird sort of stuff, and so in my mid-20s, I decided to go to mortuary school. So I am also a licensed funeral director. I used to call myself the prettiest funeral director in town because I was the only woman funeral director in town. I'm also a 4th-generation funeral director in my family. It all revolved around my grandmother. Her daddy was the undertaker in Roxton, Texas. He also owned the general store. She used to tell me that when the caskets came in, she lay in them to see if they were visible. And then she married a funeral director, my granddaddy, Gene Rhodes Sr., and her brother, Lee Denton, who's 90 years old now, was a funeral director. And then her 2 sons, my daddy and his brother, and then me. So it definitely has been a family business. And when I got out of mortuary school and got home, I still found that I was the kid everybody wanted to talk to at like breaks and meetings. And they still wanted to know the same stuff. Are you scared? And do they get up and walk around? One of my favorite funeral stories, and I'll tell you another one later, happened to an unnamed relative of mine. I won't tell who it is. But this unnamed relative of mine made a death call to, I believe, Terrell, Texas. And to get to know maybe Quinliton. Anyway, you went to Greenwood, turns out. And it was on a Friday night. You get to Terrell from on Greenwood, turns out? Okay, it was Terrell. And it was on a Friday night, and they had picked up the body, and they were coming back, and the Friday night football game in Terrell or wherever let out, and so there were lots of kids on this road that isn't really wide and isn't really straight, and who were speeding, and at one point he had to swerve the hearse to keep from getting hit by one of these kids. And when he swerved, the cot comes over. Well, you don't really need to ride all the way to Paris like that, so he stopped, pulled over on the side of the road, found a good place to stop, got out, went around to the back of the hearse, opened the door, got in, got the cot straightened up. Realized for the first time in his long life of growing up around a funeral home, being a funeral director, that there is not a door handle on the inside of the back of the hearse. Now,